welcome to the MessianTics podcast, a podcast about all things Messianic Judaism. Each episode, we will be sharing our opinions as we tackle some of the biggest issues in Messianic Judaism. Now, here's your hosts, Rabbis Eric, David, Jonathan, and Toby.
Hey everyone, this is Rabbi Toby. You're listening to the MessianTics podcast, but we're here at Brit-Am Messianic Synagogue. We're in Pensacola, and it is nice enough. I mean, it's not as sunny as it was last time we were out here, but it does feel very nice out, and we just decided to do this outside again. You may pick up a guy mowing the lawn in the property next door.
Blowing leaves or something.
I don't know what he's doing, but we can't go over there and stop him because he's doing it at the other property. So if you pick that up, sorry about that. But we're out here having a good time, and this week we decided that once again we're just going to kind of chat. We're going to kind of see where the conversation goes. We really enjoyed doing that. But Rabbi Eric, of course, he missed out on that, so he gets to join our candid discussion. So,
I felt a little jealous last week when I listened to it and said these guys were having fun without me, and I felt a little bad about that. But then I realized I was on the Mexican beach while they were doing this, and I hope they felt a little bad about that.
And Florida's Florida's mullet, as David said.
Well, how was the cruise?
It was excellent. We had our inter-congregational cruise once a year. We invite people to come and we do a cruise retreat where we have studies and services, worship, things like that while we're out there, and build relationship and community with each other. So it was really nice. Although it is funny, we live in Pensacola, which has one of the nicest beaches in the world. And so when I go to other places and people are getting off the boat and going, I can't wait to get to the beach, I'm always sitting there going, I'm not in all that much of a hurry to go to a beach that's not as nice as the one that's where I live. So although it was a beautiful place to be, it wasn't
home.
Wasn't home, but we did have a great time, and we encourage any of the listeners that want to go next year on our intercongregational cruise that you keep watching on MessianTics Facebook page. We'll let you know when it's going to be, so you can start booking your cabins and join us as we worship on the high seas
and find your sea legs.
And typically there's 3 or 4 rabbis representing their congregations on the ship, and every day there's a small, short little community worship service together, and you'll get to hear from each of the different rabbis depending on the day. Get to hear them teach a little bit. It's not like overbearing. Yeah. It's not a conference, but we do like to get together and spend a little time together and worship and digging into the Word as a community.
Right, and then we do karaoke together. We do miniature golf together.
There's no we in that.
Well, some do karaoke together, some miniature golf. We do trivia together. It's really about building a community, building relationships, getting together with people. Rabbi David is saying that he practices doing Kiddush over and over on the ship so that he can make sure he is well versed in doing Kiddush.
Somebody's going to make sure the boat's blessed.
That's right.
Sanctified.
It made me, I don't know what made this come into my mind, probably because we were talking about it a little bit before. So I'm an assistant rabbi to Rabbi David at Congregation Mayim Chaim in Daphne, Alabama. David's the senior rabbi. Rabbi Eric is the senior rabbi here at Brit-Am, and Jonathan is his assistant. So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to talk about just one of the things that I'm really happy with where I'm at right now, because I see a lot of what the senior rabbi has to deal with. And I know he's the first line of defense, even though he brings me in to assist on matters, whether it's, maybe conflict within the synagogue or just having to meet with certain people or, those kinds of things. But I think the one thing that makes me happy when I'm the assistant is when we bring in a guest. Because when you bring in a guest, whether it's a guest speaker, it could be a guest musician to come and bless your congregation, you have to understand you're bringing in a person that has their own way of doing things, their own way of living, and it would stress me out to the nth degree to make sure that I'm accommodating this person, because David and Danny have told me their stories, and some of them are very interesting.
Yeah,
but those are moments. But you have those moments where you're like, okay, I'm glad I'm just the right hand guy. I'm not the main dude.
Well, there are interesting things that happen when you invite people in to your congregation. Everything from, we had a singer one time come in and do a wonderful worship service for us, and then I was standing next to him after the service, and one of the people that attends our congregation came up and asked the singer if he would sign his ripped CD. He made a copy. It wasn't like I bought your CD from
that's
you.
Weird. That's awkward.
And would you? But he ripped and copied a CD and then brought it up and said, "I stole this music from you. Would you please sign it for me?" So
he didn't say it in those many words, I don't think.
Right, but that was the action of it. That's the reality. That we have.
That's the inference we can pull from it.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times. Now we've been blessed. We've had some of the best singers, some of the most powerful speakers in Messianic Judaism that have come and
you're welcome
and spoke for, sang for us.
Purim.
But they're my son, to get to the Purim story, my son, his very first time speaking at Bradam. Now this has been 20 years ago.
First time, but we were. This was
when you were at school.
I was in school. I was in college in New York. Came down for spring break to visit the family, and you had asked me to speak here.
And I asked him to speak on Purim because I thought. It's Purim. It's the story of Esther and Mordecai and Haman. There's nothing he can do to ruin this. Give him this opportunity, and he gets up.
You're throwing him a softball.
Yeah, I threw him the softball. There was no way he couldn't hit at least a double, if not a triple, on that. And he gets up there and he goes. So some of you think that the story of Esther is about a beauty pageant. But I'm telling you, it wasn't a beauty pageant. It was a test drive. And it was a moment where, everybody in the room just kind of stood there and said, did he actually just say that? Now, the truth is that's an accurate statement, but it's not generally the statement that you make when...
Look, you're not wrong.
Yeah, you're not wrong, however.
But you're not right either.
Yeah, you can be wrong about being right, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's but I think about like these awkward moments like Rabbi Eric shared about, the musical artists. I think what would scare me the most, honestly, would be, or would stress me out the most, would be to make sure that I provide accommodations that the guest appreciates, whether it's putting them in a hotel that's not a flea bag hotel, or even if they stay at your home, you want to hope that they're comfortable there.
Not going to lie, no doubt about it. The biggest mental hurdle to get over when you have guests come in is, especially as the leadership of the congregation, is preparing yourself for the fact that there's going to be, no matter who it is you bring in to speak, there's going to be at least one person that's going to come up and complain about, they're going to call you up that week, they're going to send you an email about, I can't believe this one thing that was said, do you agree with this, you're like, look guys, they're not me. They're not our. They're coming in representing their ministry. We brought them, but you don't have to be so uptight about stuff. But I think for me, it's always that reality that there's always going to be that one person.
Yeah, and there's always the technical issues that come, those kind of things that come up when you have guest speakers. We had one speaker come and he was doing a class, and his entire message was on his PowerPoint. All his notes, everything was on the PowerPoint, and a squirrel committed hara-kiri on the power transformer out in front of the building and took our power out. So here we're about to have Shabbat service. We have no electricity in the building, so none of our worship instruments are going to play. The sound system isn't working. The PowerPoint isn't working, and we have a guest speaker in whose entire message is on PowerPoint so he can present it to the congregation in that way. So that's probably our biggest technical issue with a guest speaker that's taken place, is the entire blackout of the building on Saturday morning. And
I think our biggest technical issue was Hurricane Sally.
Yeah, Hurricane Sally was probably a pretty big technical issue
for 10 months we were transient while our building was being restored. So I kept getting emails and calls from guest speakers or recording artists or whatever. Hey, can we come in and share at your congregation? I'm like, not right now.
Later.
Yeah, it's a little complicated at the moment. Let's revisit this in a year or so.
Yeah. But I remember even when I was here within the first 6 months, like it was just about every time I would speak, you would get a phone call during the next office hours of the week. Someone would be like, I'm not so sure about what he said.
Speaking outside guests, inquiring minds would like to know, Rabbi Eric, do you still get up after everyone, including Jonathan, and go, well, that was great. but
I do not do that behind everybody.
He hasn't done that behind me in a while.
It's been
the follow-up sermon to the sermon.
I have done that in the past, especially when David was speaking, because, when David would speak here, I'd want to make sure the people at least got fed something. So at the end of the message, I would just drop something on there so they had a little caviar to go with their
test drive.
There was someone at our speaking of Jonathan, Rabbi Jonathan made me think of this, but there was and these, I don't know where they're at now. They don't go to our congregation anymore, but I know I upset someone one week because somebody else from the congregation told me, like, hey, you made these people over here mad. I said, why? He said, well, because you said that Abraham, as in Father Abraham, the patriarch, was sinful at times. And I said, well, dang, he was. Every single person in the Bible except Yeshua was. That's the whole point. That's why the Bible's so encouraging. I share that as encouragement. I'm not dumping on him or like, say, King David. I said, but Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all committed sins. And Abraham's,
each of them in their own way were train wrecks.
Right. And I said, that should be a source of it. And he goes, no, man, they're not okay with it. They're like, how could you say he was sinful? I'm like, how could you say they're not?
Yeah. Yeah, that particular conversation was that they, and it was funny because I had said something the week before, and I basically said that Abraham telling Sarah to say that she was his sister, and so that he wouldn't get killed for her. I was like, it's pretty messed up. Like, that's a pretty messed up scenario, because Abraham basically was like, look, I don't care what happens to you. I just want to make sure I don't die. Yeah. So if you would just, they took her to be their wife. There was a lot of things that could go wrong in that scenario. And I was like, it's kind of a dirtbag move. And so they were upset about it. And then Toby followed the next week. It was kind of double down.
Hammer really down on that point.
Double down on because I simply am trying, because part of, I guess, my heart when I'm sharing the scripture is, let's have an honest picture of each of our biblical heroes.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying let's not look at their successes, but you can't look at their successes without looking at the fact, without their accompanying failures.
Right, it's like King David, who's, a man after God's own heart. People love that verse. But when you think of the fact that David was a murderer,
a womanizer,
rapist, sex trafficker,
possible idolater.
Yes.
But when we look at the clarity of the scripture in its fullness, but it's also interesting, I can say something from the bima when I'm speaking and no one will say anything about it. Rabbi Jonathan can say the same thing, and all of a sudden it's a tragic consequence that needs immediate attention.
Right. We'll know about this young guy.
So it's just interesting how all that happens. And so we've had, like I said, people that have come. That's right. We've had people that have come and we've had technical issues. We've had people that have come and they've said stuff.
Had technical issues.
That were have technical issues. We've had people that have come and said things that would have gone.
I am the technical issue.
That have gone against things that we would normally hold to and have to fix those things, and you end up getting the phone calls about, can you believe he mentioned that or this or. Those kind of things. So it's interesting. It's always a risk when you invite someone to come to your congregation because you're trusting them with your sheep, with your people, and that they're not going to do any damage that you can't fix.
Yeah, there was, and this is like 15 years ago this happened. At the first congregation I attended, we invited a guy from Israel. He's a rabbi, not a believer in Yeshua, but he was involved in the Temple Institute, which is, about they're. I haven't followed them in a while, so I don't know if they're. I'm sure they're still active.
Oh yeah, it's still very active.
Okay, yeah. So we invite him, and he gives just a talk basically on what they're doing and stuff. Everybody knew this guy didn't believe. Didn't accept Yeshua as Messiah, that he was an Orthodox rabbi, if I'm correct. And he was a very nice guy. He was very sweet, very, very warm and welcoming, and shared a lot of good stuff. But what was funny was when our rabbi got up after it was all over and said, and just basically laid out, we know Yeshua's Messiah, and we know that when this temple's built, he's the one that's going to sit in it. And that dude was just sitting there. Everybody kind of got up and clapped, and that dude just sat there with his legs crossed. He did not move one bit. And I was like, man, how did that go over with him? He goes, I don't know how it went over with him, but I'm sure he was happy with the offering he got.
So I want to ask a quick question. Rabbi Eric and I are partnering on a tour to Israel. This will be the first one that we've partnered on officially, but we're partnering on a tour to Israel and really looking forward to it. But it had me think about this, and I don't know, Rabbi Jonathan, have you been to Israel yet?
I have not been to Israel yet.
I know Rabbi Toby hasn't. I think Rabbi Eric's been once.
It's actually,
but I do.
Just a couple of beers,
right? It brings up an intriguing question. One of the beauties of going to Israel is getting to experience the Bible come to life. Right, you get to walk around the sites where the actual events that we read about in the Tanakh and Brit Hadashah occurred, where these things were laid out, where prophecy was fulfilled and revealed, and so on. And so the question I have for really everybody at the table is, and Rabbi Eric and I have both been, and Rabbi Toby and Rabbi Jonathan have not been, but going to Israel, if you were on a hypothetical trip to Israel, going to Israel, what is the single most important site in Israel that you would like to see, experience, and why?
Mount of Olives. Yeah, simply because Yeshua spends so much time praying there. Mm-hmm. And it's... I don't know, I look at it as kind of like, if you're a disciple, you're kind of obligated to visit where your teacher went or goes. And so, so Mount of Olives for me would be a big one to go to and to pray, to go, to get up early, leave the hotel, and to go and have an early morning, as the sun is rising, go and just spend time in prayer and in the Word.
Yeah, that's good. For me, the Kinneret, which is the Sea of Galilee. So much happened there. From Yeshua teaching to Peter's restoration, which, obviously we don't know the exact place, but we know it was on the shore.
They've got a pretty solid idea on where it likely was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the most beautiful moments in Scripture. It's one of my favorite parts of the entire Scripture. Oddly enough,
it's a Catholic site now.
But
most of them are.
Yeah.
So the Kinneret and En-Gedi, because I know that we know that that's where David at some point hid from King Saul. These places where, so that's Tanakh and that's Brit Hadashah. So the Kinneret for Brit Hadashah, and for as far as the Tanakh, I would love to go to En-Gedi and just look at the caves and know that, man, at one point King David was just hiding in there, and God was providing for him, and it was such an integral part of the people of Israel's history. And
there's four things I love to point out to people or bring when they go to Israel. One is, of course, the Temple Mount, which is so central to our faith. It's where Abraham sacrificed Isaac. It's where the temple stood. It's where all these events happened. What?
Where Abraham tied up Isaac.
He sacrificed him. He didn't kill him, but he put him on there. He sacrificed him. So anyhow, so that's one place. Caesarea Philippi, which is the place where Peter says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." It's the gates of hell. When the Scripture says, "And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it," there's actually a place called the gates of hell in Caesarea Philippi. It's a really powerful statement. I love to go to Megiddo, to the place where Armageddon, the Battle of Armageddon, which actually isn't the Battle of Armageddon. The battle actually takes place in Jerusalem. The troops gather together in the valley of Megiddo.
Yeah, I asked Rabbi David, not to cut you off, but I asked Rabbi David, I said, "You've seen it." I said, "Does it look like a place where a battle would, take place?" Or where he goes, "Oh yeah, it's huge."
Yeah, that's where the troops all gather together to fight in Jerusalem. There's no Battle of Armageddon. There's the Battle of Jerusalem.
So it's a big plain?
It's a big valley that's there. And it's just an amazing place to see. But
beautiful.
But to remind people that the valley is where the soldiers gather. It's not actually where the battle takes place. Yeah. And the fourth thing that I think is really powerful is as Rabbi David said, when you go there, you see the scriptures come to life. It becomes real. You can place yourself inside the text in a lot of ways. Normally, when you land in Tel Aviv airport, and then you go to Joppa, which is where Peter is or Cornelius is when he sends for Peter. The whole thing goes on, and then, Peter is when Cornelius sends for him, and then you drive up the coast to Caesarea, which is where the event happens, and then you realize how far that is. That wasn't like walking across town. Right. That's like walking up the entire coast of Israel, just about from the bottom to the top along the coastline, from Tel Aviv, Jaffa to Caesarea, and the mountains and the trail. This was not, like, hey, walk up to Publix and get me some milk or whatever. This was a big trip that he took to get there, and just putting yourself in that story and seeing how significant this trip actually was, the journey was, how arduous it was, traveling over the mountains, the rocks, all the things that go on. It's just pretty amazing to see that and put yourself in that place and understand that there's more to the story than just, Peter had this vision while he was up on the rooftop and was told to go to Cornelius' house, and he walked across the street to Cornelius' house, and that was it, But this is like the length of Israel on the coast that he goes to go from Jaffa to Caesarea.
Yeah, I'd really like to walk the road to Emmaus as well. Like, that's been pretty well, I hate to say paved because it's not really paved, but people have taken care to make sure that a path actually exists there now. And so, like, I remember I watched this young couple one time record their journey on YouTube, walking the road to Emmaus, and it was pretty cool. It's about a day's walk. I mean, you can do it in a day. The walk. It's still a long walk, but it was kind of fun to see, like, oh yeah, I'd like to do that. That'd be kind of fun to go and do.
I heard a young lady one time sharing at one of the conferences about a youth group that had gone to Israel on a trip, the young Messianic group that had gone, and the people involved in the trip said, okay, we're going somewhere special tonight, so make plans, we're going to get on the bus at this time and we'll take you there. And so it was one of the last nights of their tour, so the girls they heard special, so they got dressed up, they heeled, the whole, in their nice clothes.
Right.
And then they had them walk. They get off the bus in this wilderness area, and they're walking this path, and as they're walking, they're complaining about, here we are all dressed up, and we're walking through all this and this, and just moaning and groaning. And when they get to the end of the walk, they come to this clearing, and the person leading the tour says, do you know where you are? And they said, no. Do you know what you just did? No. You were just walking on the road to Emmaus. And it kind of broke them because they were complaining about this journey, kind of like the disciples were when they were on the road to Emmaus, and they were complaining about Yeshua died, what are we going to do, what's going on, all of that, while Yeshua was walking with them on this road, and just how meaningful that walk was as they went.
For me, there's actually a couple of things. One is the one site that I love going to and I'm looking forward to most on this trip is Tel Shiloh, which is in the north. It's where the Mishkan, the tabernacle, stood in Israel's history for 370-something years, of memory serves, 360-something, 370-something years before it was moved to Jerusalem.
Wow.
And what's really interesting about it is that they've pretty well, like, when you go to the Kotel, the Western Wall, right? It's the closest place we can get to outside of the tunnels. It's the closest place we can get to where the temple once stood, to where the Holy of Holies once stood, which is why it's deemed such a holy site, because it's as close as it's really a retaining wall, a retention wall, but it's as close as we can get to where the Holy of Holies once stood. But you can go to Tel Shiloh, and you can stand on the very ground that the Holy of Holies stood for 370 years, give or take. I mean, it's just an absolutely unreal thing. And for me, I talked about this in our Bible study last night. For me, I think the biggest mistake that Israel ever made, and I don't want to like mitigate the prophetic purpose to it, to the temple, but I think one of the biggest mistakes that Israel ever made was building the temple, the physical temple, because it was a permanent dwelling place. Like, we caged the presence of God in this permanent dwelling place in Jerusalem, which is why when David first approached God about it, I was like, never asked for one. Like, you think I need this temple because all these other gods around you have a temple, but I didn't ask for that. I asked for a tabernacle that was mobile, that was temporal, that could be carried with you. And I think one of the reasons it was the biggest mistake, one of the biggest mistakes we made, was because in order for us to travel pre the temple, we took the presence of God with us. Yeah. The tabernacle traveled with us in the wilderness. We took the ark to battle. All these kind of, like, the presence of God went with us everywhere we went. Then we built the temple, and we just said, all right, God, we're going to go over here. We'll come back to you eventually. And we left God caged, the presence of God caged in this physical, permanent structure of the temple. And so there's just something so powerful about standing on the ground where the tabernacle once stood, the temporal presence, the temporal dwelling place for the presence of God. When the Brit Chadashah calls the body of Messiah the tabernacle, the temporal dwelling place for the presence of God, it's just something. There's something unique and powerful.
Yeah. Shiloh is also where they divided up the lots of land to each of the tribes. Took place there. Shiloh is also the place where Hannah has her, she's in the tabernacle. Shiloh is also the place where Samuel's kids fall away. We have all this stuff happens in Shiloh that we don't even pay attention to, because we think that the temple and where it is in Jerusalem is where all the main activities of Israel took place. But for hundreds of years, the tabernacle was in Shiloh, and which is called Shiloh by many people.
Shala.
So the same people that say Shekinah.
Yeah, those people.
Shekinah glory.
So anyhow, it's just important to note the Yeshua history, Jesus. And that you can sit there in this location and just revel and feel the history, the presence.
Now, my two favorite experiences in Israel, outside of being at Shiloh, that's the Shiloh is the site that I am looking forward to the most, that I appreciated the most. But the two experiences that were, for all intents and purposes, for me at least, the most, I think the most intriguing experiences that I had in Israel. One of them was actually at the Kinneret, or not the Kinneret, the Yardenit, which is the site where, typically speaking, if you go to Israel and you go to do a mikvah or an immersion, a baptism in the Jordan River, you're actually doing it in the Yardenit, which is this little kind of tributary of the Jordan, and it's this little site that you go to with the corrals, like going through a buffet to get down to the water and what have you. But
right, and the reason that it's been traditionally that people get immersed in the Yardenit and not in the Jordan itself is because the cousins on the other side of the Jordan have not always been friendly toward the people on the Israel side of the Jordan.
And so we were at the Yardenit. We were doing a mikvah at the Yardenit, and I had reached out to Joshua Aaron, who's a friend of mine, and I reached out to him as we were getting ready to go to Israel. I was like, hey, dude, we're going to be in Israel in a week or so. It'd be really awesome if you're in country. It'd be really awesome if we could get together at least for a minute and say hello, give each other a hug, whatever, catch up. He was like, oh, that's great. He goes, tell me, he says, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to be at the Yardenit on this day. He was like, dude, my kids go to school at the kibbutz across the street. He goes, I'll be dropping my kids off about the same time you guys are going to be there, so I'll meet you in the gift shop. When you come in, just come look for me, and we'll catch up.
There's a gift shop?
There's a gift shop every. It's
surprisingly,
like every site. It's like coming out of a ride at Disney.
What can you? Sorry to interrupt, but what can you buy at the gift shop? I'm just
everything that you can buy everywhere else in Israel.
Morbidly curious. Like, what do you get at the immersion site?
We call them ha-ha shops because everything there is overpriced, like it is at Disney. You can go to Disney and buy Mickey Mouse ears for $50, or you can go to a store outside of Disney and get them for $5.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so we meet up with them, and our tour guide, who's a really good friend of ours as well, but is lives a couple of houses away from Joshua Aaron, knows his family really well. And so Joshua was there, and she sees him. She's like, dude, oh, this is great. You're here. You're going to lead us in worship as we go down to the yard and eat. He's like, no, I didn't bring my guitar. I didn't bring my ukulele. I wasn't prepared. I just came to see David. That was it. I just came. She was like, and she just kept kind of put the typical Jewish guilt trip on him. And you got to do it. You got to do it. So finally he gave in. And so, and it was interesting because we go down to the corrals. We get down to the water. I do a brief teaching on mikvah and why we do it and what it means and why we're doing it at the Jordan and so on. And there's this huge group of probably 70, 75 Brazilians that are in the water currently. I mean, they're like super Pentecostal Brazilians that are in the water. They're already doing their thing. They're
another level
their
of
own,
Pentecostal.
yeah. They're having their own worship service, their own thing going on down there. But I finished my teaching and I'm like, all right, Joshua, well, if you want, you lead us in a song real quick. So Joshua Aaron does a version of How Great Is Our God called Gadol Elohai, right? And so which is the same words but in Hebrew. And so he's like, all right, we're going to sing this. And so he leads us to sing Gadol Elohai. Well, if you know that song at all, it doesn't matter what language you speak, that melody catches your attention.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're singing Gadol Elohai, and the Brazilians stop dead in their tracks and turn and face us. And we're like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. I guess we're putting on a show. So we're singing Gadol Elohai, we're worshiping together and all, and then we make our way down to the water to do our mikvah ceremony. And as we get into the water and we start doing mikvah, the Brazilians start to sing How Great Is Our God in Portuguese over us.
Wow.
So it was like while they were doing their thing, inadvertently we were worshiping over them, covering them in worship and in the presence of God. And then we go down to the water and they turn around and are singing the same song in worship over us, covering us in the presence
Portuguese?
of God.
Wow.
In Portuguese, yeah. I mean, it was just this really cool experience. And the it's a small world reality, right? Like just everything comes together in
Every
this one
nation,
unique moment.
every tongue.
Yep. And then the other thing was when we were on Habracha, or Mount Gerizim, the Mount of Blessings, we actually got to sit down on the front lawn of the Samaritan High Priest on the Samaritan Rosh Hashanah and have this really cool conversation for like an hour and a half, 2 hours on his front lawn. Really weird dude. They got some really weird things that they do. They still do sacrifices and all that, so we get to see where they do their sacrifices and what have you. But we got to sit down on his front lawn and just have a conversation with him for a while, which was a really cool experience.
Now, to go back to the yard and eat and your story, we were in Israel one time, and there was a big-name television preacher who had a group of about 500 people that came with him to Israel. And they're down in the water, and they're getting immersed, and he's immersing these people. But he's got this, assembly line going on where he had his bodyguard people or whatever standing in the water with him. He's in a wetsuit. They have a guy with an umbrella over,
like a scuba,
like a full wetsuit. He's got the guy holding. He's got no tank, but
it's a joke.
He's got an umbrella over his head, and they're grabbing people and kind of tossing them from one person to the other, so that it can speed through. Because they got 500 people, they have to get through this thing.
My goodness!
And he's like dipping him in the water, and as they're coming out the water, he's like pushing them, and they're bouncing out of the water, going to the next person. And going on, it was.
I picture Pike's Market and the fish.
I say blessed because I knew a guy who would, anytime I would say something to him, like I would text him and I'd be like, dude, something really encouraging or something. He was actually the producer on me and Brooks' album that we recorded, just a side note. And anytime we would text something, man, it sounds great, this is great, we appreciate all your work, he would just text back, bless.
So anyhow, and I'm not mocking this person nor the immersions, but it was just a funny kind of looking at it scene as people were just being pushed from and tossed almost from one to the next so they could get 500 people.
That's fun.
All through this immersion.
Is it cold? Is the water cold?
The water is cool.
And there are little fish
in there, and there are big catfish in there.
You know, when you see the videos of people, like, they're getting the pedicures with the little fish that are like, it's like that, but they're everywhere, and they're all over, like, your legs,
little,
everything.
like minnow-type fish.
Right, and the bottom is all stones, and not all round stones, so it's not the most comfortable place to walk.
So bring sandals when you go.
Unless you step on a fish, and then it's a little squishy.
So you need to wear your wetsuit with flippers.
Actually, I have to say, one of my friends who's been to Israel a couple times, he told me, because I have this thing for books, and especially what I call shiny books, so really nice leather, bound Bibles and Siddurim. And he was telling me, he was like, man, Jerusalem has tons of these used bookstores. You just go in and it's just like shelves of these. And you can buy every kind of Siddurim from Ashkenazi, Sephardic. You can buy Tanakhs. Sometimes you'll run across a store that may have the Bibles with the Brit Chadashah in it, but it's there's usually a little less. So, but I was like, man, that would be something I'd definitely look forward to doing.
Israel has some unique things. For instance, you can still haggle in Israel in many of the shops.
Yeah, David.
I would haggle over some Siddurim.
You go in and you haggle down. Also,
David haggled some guy from like $1,000 to like $30, like over something, some blanket or something.
And the funny thing is, I wasn't even haggling. I didn't want it.
He was walking away.
Took me saying no.
If you're the first person in a store in the morning, they really want to sell you something because it's a good sign for the rest of the day. But also, we go to a diamond factory in Israel almost every time we go in the evening. After we tour, after we have dinner, we go to a diamond factory.
Just to see how the diamonds are?
Yeah, they show you how they cut the diamonds, how they polish them, and then they have a jewelry store that you go into.
Right.
And they'll sell you jewelry on a handshake. Like, I went in there and I got a ring for my wife, and I said, look, the banks are closed today because it happened to be...
The Hasidim in the Diamond District in Manhattan do the exact same thing.
Yeah, you go in and, they let me take this diamond ring home to my wife and then mail them a check in. Just on a handshake. And the same thing, there's some art shops. We went to an art shop where the guy said, if you want it, just take it and send me... shake my hand and take it.
That's really putting your neck out there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, the trust level that's with a handshake in Israel that isn't quite the same here in the U.S.
Yeah. It's a different world.
I've been, not to take it away from Israel, but I've been mikvahed as far as after I was Messian. I was baptized when I was in the church, in like a baptismal in the back of our sanctuary, or I guess it was behind the pulpit, not in the back. So it was it was behind the pulpit. It was this
like a Baptist.
Yeah, and the water.
Baptistry.
It was like a big tub.
Yeah.
And the water was like super warm. I remember I wore my socks for some reason. I don't know what I was thinking, but anyway,
because you always have socks on.
And I had broken my finger. And my mom didn't want me to get my casting all wet, but I was like, she's like, just raise your arm up out of it. I'm like, no, I want my whole body to go in the water. But so that was the first time. But I've been mikvah twice since I've been in the movement. One was
which finger? Because now I've got like a picture of George Costanza chasing the dude down on side.
My left hand. I slammed a car door on it. It was my left hand, my middle finger. Anyway, so.
It's a wonder we get through these conversations.
Yeah, I know.
Some of the side comments.
And it was the middle finger.
But I got mikvahed in a lake in Savannah when I went to Caranor. I was serving under Rabbi Jude Caracello. And I got mikvahed in a river in Georgia, in North Georgia, by a friend of mine named Joseph Riverwind. But he's Native American.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've heard that name before.
For those that are curious, he did some worship with Joshua Aaron.
He did, yeah.
Yeah,
and
okay. So we're thinking of the same place.
Oh, gosh, yeah. When I met Joseph Riverwind when I was in Macon, but we went and we struck a close friendship, so we visited his home. He lived near a reservation, and he took us to this river, and I don't know, just the Spirit of God came, and I was like, man, Joseph, I just feel led for you to immerse me right now, and he prayed over me and immersed me. It was a really beautiful moment, but it was freezing cold, and again, the stones are really round. But when I got mikvahed in Savannah, Rabbi Jude took us to this lake, and it was like I got into the lake, of course, but to my ankles in like sludge. Like whatever the crap was on the bottom of that lake, it was like to my ankles. So it was so nasty.
So you
such an oxymoron.
It's like Naaman. Can't we go to a clean river in Assyria?
So the conversation on mikvah brings up an interesting question, and we can maybe use this as our last discussion on this episode. And, Rabbi Eric was telling the story of the fish market style mikvah where they're just throwing people down the line to get them to the guy that's dunking them and all that. But Rabbi Eric, I'm gonna let you dive into this question and actually answer the historical side of it and all that. But in Judaism, that's typically not how a mikvah is done. It's kind of a hands off by the people that are kind of overseeing it.
Right.
So
The
if
way-
you'll talk about the differences between like the Christian perspective of a baptism and the Jewish perspective of a mikveh.
Well, there are several differences. One is that in Judaism, mikveh isn't a one-time thing. It's a preparation for entering into a holy space.
Yep.
So in the Orthodox community, people will go through mikveh before every Shabbat,
Yep.
so that they're also before weddings, after an illness. There's many times where people go through immersion because it's a part of the ritual cleansing that is part of Judaism in commemorating going to the temple when they would get mikveh or go through tevilah before going into the temple. But it's also done in traditional way with no clothes on, and supervised by the attendant,
Yep.
who doesn't put their hands on you,
And
but
it has to be living water.
Right, has to be living water, has to be over 150 gallons of water.
Can you
has to be
explain
able to drain.
can you explain like living water in case somebody?
Right, it has to be water that can not be stagnated. In other words, if it's in a tank, the tank has to be able to be completely emptied out. In other words, if the drain has to be at the lowest point in the tank and the water has to be refreshed constantly.
And typically in an Orthodox synagogue, it would actually be tapped into like an aquifer or
Right.
something underwater. Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
so
underground.
that it's living water, fresh water. It's not stagnant or still water.
Gotcha.
And then you go in the water and you dunk yourself under the water. Now, traditionally, it's done 3 times for Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, or for the Kohanim, the Levites, and the regular Israelites. But 3 times of being immersed under the water. And that's, by the way, how we do it at our synagogue. We go out
do as
to
well, yep.
The water, either the bay or the ocean, or sometimes a river, and the person or people go out in the water, and then they pray. We say a barucha, a prayer over the people, but then they pray themselves, and when they've connected spiritually in the way that they desire to or feel led to, then they put themselves under the water. And it's the attendant's job just to make sure they get fully under the water and that they come back out of the water. It's important.
The head count's important.
Yeah, the head count is important. There's lots of times where we have 15, 20, 25 people that go out to the water, so we count them when they go out, and then we count how many come back, so we make sure that everybody goes out, comes back in. But that's part of how it's done. So the church has, in a large way, made it something that immersion or baptism is a one-time thing, not part of a regular life, and also that it's something where somebody puts you under the water and puts you back up. In Judaism, you do it yourself, and so that it's you doing 100% of what you're doing.
Right.
It's not someone else having involvement in your decision, but you are completely committed to this decision, and you put yourself under the water, and then you come back out of the water. And when in John chapter 3, when it talks about how can I be born anew or born again, can I enter into my mother's womb, that whole series of verses about you must be born again is talking about immersion. It's talking about water baptism. It's talking about you go into the water one way, you come out of the water another. You go into the water single, you come out married. You go into the water sick, you come out well. You go into the water a sinner, you come out of the water washed, with your sins washed away. That's why when Paul is speaking, it says, arise and be immersed in the name of the Lord, washing away your sins. Now, how that works, I don't know. I don't know how, when I go in a bathtub and I take a bath, or I go in a swimming pool and just go swimming, it doesn't have any spiritual ramifications to my life. But when I present myself to God and I go through the waters of immersion, there's a supernatural thing that happens that brings about a supernatural spiritual change.
It's the intention, I think, behind it.
Yeah,
So-
God honoring that. Absolutely.
So that's so when we go to the Yard Neat, and actually on our trip this year, we're going to the actual Jordan, to the location that the archaeologists and such believe is where Yeshua actually got immersed, where John the Immerser, Yochanan HaMatbil, was doing the immersions, where the Israelites crossed from Jordan into the land. Of course, it wasn't called Jordan at the time. Into the land, all that took place. We're actually
It was
going to
that
be,
place.
we're actually going to be immersing people in the Jordan itself, and not in the Yard Neat this time. So it's pretty exciting to be doing that a little different this year.
Cool.
I hope this has been a blessing. I hope that you'll pay attention to both the information about the upcoming intercongregational cruise, which will be coming up next year, and also for our next trip to Israel. If you've never been to Israel, we encourage you to go with a Messianic rabbi so you'll get the perspective of somebody who's looking from a Hebraic and a biblical perspective at the Scriptures, and that you'll come with us if the opportunity presents itself. Thank you so much, and shalom.
Thank you for listening to the MessianTics podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you can be notified every time we drop a new episode. And be sure to follow and interact with us on social media at MessianTics Podcast.